Hello, I'm Cindy Palm, lay leader at the historic First United Methodist Church in downtown Elgin, Illinois, and this is your motivational moment from the Bible. Whew, I think we can probably all agree that last week was a rough week. Who am I kidding? It's been a rough year. And as we head into the winter season, with COVID cases on the rise, I doubt it's going to get better anytime soon. Over the past several months, I've heard from many of you about your struggles in coping with this pandemic, this election season, and all the other stuff that life's been throwing at you. I've heard the phrases COVID fatigue and election stress disorder, so you know if they've come up with names, that it's a pretty sure sign that if you're feeling any sort of way, you're definitely not alone. I shared with you before that I wanted to use this time as wisely as I possibly could. So in my search for anything that would help in my growth, I found myself leaning more and more on the Bible, my ratty little Bible. It really is the go-to manual for any time you need comfort or reassurance, even advice. So I'd like to share with you what I have found, because, I don't know, maybe it would help you as well. I've been doing some daily devotionals in a book called Solo. This is a woman's devotional, but I know they do have a regular one as well. And one of the Bible verses that I came across really hit home for me. It was in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 16 through 18. And this is from the Message. So it says, so we're not giving up. No, we're not giving up. How could we? Even though on the outside it often looks like things are falling apart around us, on the inside, where God is making new life, not a day goes by without his unfolding grace. These hard times are small potatoes compared to the coming good times, the lavish celebration prepared for us. There's far more here than meets the eye. The things we see now are here today, gone tomorrow. But the things we can't see now will last forever. It's all about perspective, isn't it? I know for me, that's probably the biggest challenge. That's why Romans chapter 12, verse 2 is so important to me. It says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It's probably my favorite Bible verse because I have to ask myself all the time if my mind needs to be renewed. And then I have to ask God to help me do it. I'm also working through our Pastor Felicia LeBoy's book, Unstuck. Now in this book, she focuses quite a bit on Joshua. And this is the time after Moses has died, and it's now up to him to lead the people into the promised land. Now, I want you to recognize something here. I'm going to read some scriptures, and I want you to pay attention to how many times God reassures Joshua that he's got this, that he's strong enough and he's capable of doing this, and that everything is going to be okay. I'm going to start with Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 6. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Then down on verse 8, the Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Then we go over to the book of Joshua, chapter 1, with verse 5. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. And down on verse 9, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So how many times does he tell him this? He tells him over and over, I am with you. I've got this, and I've got you. And he's telling you the same thing. Also in my studies, I came across a scripture in First Kings, chapter 19, starting with verse 11. This is when the Lord appears to Elijah. The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. I've been reading Jane Rubietta's latest book, Brilliance, Finding Light in Dark Places. And she tells a story that kind of coincides with that verse. She's talking about a time when she was on the Columbia River in Canada. The Columbia River originates in Canada and winds through Washington until forming a boundary between Washington and Oregon. The mighty river makes a steady 1,243-mile run for the Pacific Ocean. Now, she was on this river, and she said it rolled gently in a very calm fashion for quite a while, until it reached Astoria, Oregon, the Pacific Ocean entryway. There, the waves came as high as 40 feet. There, the Columbia becomes a deadly force, one of the most dangerous bar crossings on the planet. Sailors and the Coast Guard dubbed this port the graveyard of the Pacific because of the turbulence of this salt and freshwater meet and greet. So many ships have capsized that the Coast Guard trains its recruits there. If they can hold on to their ship in those high waves, if they can perform rescues in those stormy waters, then they can likely rescue anyone from just about anywhere. Now, she mentions after they went through this rough passage, it was about sunset when they were fully into the Pacific Ocean. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen a West Coast sunset, but they are spectacular. The colors are unlike anything you'll see anywhere else. There's purple and pinks and blues mixed in with the orange and red. It's amazing. And when I stop to think of going through those rough waters, the most dangerous passage possibly in the world, and coming out to that calm and beautiful sunset, I stop and think about what lies ahead for us. Even though we may be going through some turbulent times, we need to keep focused on what's ahead, on where God is when we get out on the other side. Back in 2008, during the economic turndown, my husband had lost his job. And one of the things that really got me through that time was a book called Jesus Calling. I'm sure many of you have read through this book. This book focuses quite a bit on the Psalms, and I was able to compile a list of verses that really spoke to me and helped me get through that really tough time. And I've made a list of a few of them. There are many, many, but I've only gotten down to chapter 62, which I've only went through half the book. But let me read some of them to you. I'm going to start with Psalms chapter 4, verse 8. "In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety." Psalms chapter 9, verse 10. "Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you." Psalm 16, verse 8. "I keep my eyes always on the Lord. With him at my right hand, I will not be shaken." Psalms 18, verse 30. "As for God, his way is perfect. The Lord's word is flawless. He shields all who take refuge in him." Psalms 27, verse 14. "Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. Psalm 34, verse 17 through 19. The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Do you feel crushed in spirit? I do. The righteous person may have troubles, but the Lord delivers them from them all. Psalm 40, verses 1 through 2. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard me cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. Of course, Psalm 46, verse 1. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. And Psalm 62, verse 5 through 8. Yes, my soul, find rest in God. My hope comes from him. Truly, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. Trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. Ever since this pandemic began, for some weird reason, I have felt moved to reread Joseph Cardinal Bernadin's The Gift of Peace. And I finally gave in and checked it out at the library. I realized that I had to read this because something was telling me to do so. And I don't know if you've read this book, if you're familiar with it, but if you'll recall, he ended up being diagnosed with prostate cancer and died within 2 years. And he was very public about his journey to death, and that is primarily what the book is about. He writes that by embracing the pain, by looking into it and beyond it, I have come to see God's presence in even the worst situations. He talks about coming to terms with what you can't control, about turning it over to God, and in that act, finding peace. So I'd like to close by reading to you how he ends the book. He says, "What I would like to leave behind is a simple prayer that each of you may find peace, the peace that I have found, God's special gift to all, the gift of peace. When we are at peace, we find the freedom to be most fully who we are, even in the worst of times. We let go of what is non-essential and embrace what is essential. We empty ourselves so that God may more fully work within us, and we become instruments in the hands of the Lord." So my prayer also is that all of us can find the means to be at peace. Peace be with you. This is Cindy Palm. This is your motivational moment from the Bible. Bye-bye.